Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be completely invisible to the world, only to discover that your voice might be the only thing standing between life and death? My name is Sophie Lane, and I'm 6 years old. Most people walk past me like I'm just another piece of trash blowing down the sidewalk. I live in the shadows of Minneapolis, sleeping in doorways when it's cold, hiding under bridges when it rains. My mama left me at a gas station 3 months ago, promising she'd come back. She never did. The social workers tried to catch me twice, but I'm small and fast, and I learned that sometimes being invisible is the only way to survive. People see a dirty little girl with tangled hair and torn clothes, and they look away real quick. They don't want to feel bad about their warm beds and full refrigerators. I understand. It's easier to pretend kids like me don't exist, but being invisible taught me something important. I see things other people miss. I hear conversations they think nobody's listening to. I notice details that might save someone's life. That cold Tuesday morning in October, I was digging through the dumpster behind the Starbucks on Nicollet Mall when I overheard something that would change everything. But what I discovered wasn't just about saving a stranger's life. It was about finding out that sometimes the most broken people can become the strongest family you never knew you needed. The autumn wind cut through my thin jacket like ice as I crouched behind the green dumpster, carefully peeling the lid off a half-eaten blueberry muffin. My stomach had been empty for 2 days, and this soggy pastry felt like a feast. That's when I heard voices drifting from the coffee shop's back door. "Tomorrow morning, 8:15 sharp," a woman's voice said, sharp and cold like broken glass. "He always takes the same route to the office. Simon will be waiting in the parking garage." I froze, muffin halfway to my mouth. The woman sounded angry, the kind of angry that makes your skin crawl. "And you're sure about the insurance policy?" This was a man's voice, gravelly and mean. $25 million, Simon. More than enough to disappear and start over. Ethan Calloway won't know what hit him. My heart started beating real fast. Ethan Calloway. I knew that name. His picture was on magazines at the grocery store checkout. The rich man who built all those computer companies. The one who lived in the big glass house on Lake Minnetonka that I'd seen in newspapers people threw away. "The car accident has to look real," the woman continued. "No mistakes. Cut the brake lines tonight, then follow him until he crashes. Make sure he doesn't survive." The back door slammed shut, and I heard footsteps walking away. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows, my whole body shaking. Not from the cold this time, but from what I just heard. Someone was going to kill Mr. Calloway tomorrow morning, and nobody knew but me. I tried to tell myself it wasn't my problem. Rich people had their own troubles, and I had enough to worry about. But Mama used to tell me that knowing something bad was going to happen and doing nothing about it made you just as guilty as the bad people. "Sophie, baby," she'd say, "we might not have much, but we always do what's right." That night, I huddled in my usual spot under the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, staring at the city lights and trying to figure out what to do. A homeless 6-year-old doesn't just walk up to a billionaire and say, "Hey, somebody wants to kill you." Who would believe me? Who would even listen? But I couldn't let someone die when I could stop it, even if that someone lived in a world so different from mine that we might as well be on different planets. I spent all night planning, and by morning, I knew exactly where I needed to be. At 7:45 a.m., I positioned myself near the entrance of the Callaway Technologies building downtown. My plan was simple: wait for Mr. Callaway to arrive, run up to him, and tell him everything I'd heard. What could go wrong? Everything, as it turned out. Mr. Callaway's black Tesla pulled up to the curb at exactly 8:10 a.m. He stepped out, tall and impressive in his dark suit, looking like he owned the whole city. His driver said something about parking in the garage, and that's when I remembered. The woman said Simon would be waiting in the parking garage. I ran toward Mr. Calloway as fast as my legs could carry me. Sir, please don't go to the parking garage." A security guard immediately stepped between us. "Hey, kid, you can't be here. Move along." "Please, you have to listen to me." I tried to dodge around the guard, but he caught my arm. "Someone's going to hurt him. They cut his car's brakes, Mr. Calloway paused, his cold blue eyes studying me with the same expression people use when they're trying to figure out if they should call animal control. "What did you say?" "Your fiancée," I blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. "Clara something. She hired a man named Simon to kill you for insurance money. They're going to make it look like an accident." The security guard started pulling me away. Sorry, Mr. Calloway. I'll handle this. But Mr. Calloway held up his hand. Something in my voice, or maybe the specific details I'd mentioned, made him pause. Wait, how do you know about Clara? I heard them talking behind the Starbucks yesterday. The lady with the sharp voice. She said 8:15. Parking garage, brake lines cut. She said $25 million. Mr. Calloway's face went completely white. The insurance policy amount was exact. Not something a random street kid would know. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Marcus, check my car immediately. Look for any tampering with the brake system. We all stood there in the cold morning air, the security guard still holding my arm, Mr. Calloway staring at me like I was some kind of puzzle he couldn't solve. His phone rang. Mr. Calloway, came the voice on speaker. You need to see this. Someone definitely cut your brake lines. This car would have crashed before you made it 6 blocks. The silence that followed felt like the whole world had stopped breathing. Mr. Calloway knelt down to my eye level. His expression completely changed. Little girl, what's your name? Sophie Lane, I whispered, suddenly scared again. Had I done the right thing? Or had I just made everything worse? Sophie, you just saved my life. 20 minutes later, I found myself in the strangest place I'd ever been. The penthouse office of Ethan Calloway, 60 floors above Minneapolis. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, and the whole city looked like a toy set below us. I'd never been this high up before, and my stomach felt funny every time I looked down. Mr. Calloway, Ethan, he told me to call him, paced back and forth while talking rapidly into his phone. I want Clara arrested immediately, and find Simon Rake. He's probably still in the parking garage. But when the police arrived, they brought news that made everything more complicated. Mr. Calloway, Detective Rivera said, her voice grim, Clara DeWitt has an alibi. She was at a charity luncheon yesterday with 50 witnesses, and we found a man in your parking garage, but he claims he's just a maintenance worker. No evidence of any crime. I watched Ethan's face crumble, but Sophie heard them planning it. The brake lines were cut. Detective Rivera looked at me with the same expression I'd seen 1,000 times before. The look adults give kids they don't believe. Mr. Calloway, with all due respect, children sometimes imagine things, especially children in difficult circumstances. I didn't imagine it. I jumped up from the leather chair that was way too big for me. The lady had a sharp voice, and she said Simon would be waiting, and she talked about $25 million. Clara mentioned the insurance policy to me last week, Ethan said quietly. Sophie couldn't have known that detail unless she really heard it, but Detective Rivera was already shaking her head. Could have overheard it anywhere. Mr. Calloway, someone definitely sabotaged your car, but we need real evidence to make arrests. Right now, all we have is the word of a homeless child against a prominent socialite. After the police left, Ethan and I sat in his office in silence. The afternoon storm clouds were rolling in over Lake Minnetonka, and the first raindrops began pattering against the enormous windows. They don't believe me, I said, my voice small in the huge room. I believe you, Sophie. Ethan sat down across from me, and for the first time, his eyes looked kind instead of cold. The question is, what do we do now? Clara knows her plan failed. She'll try again, and she'll be more careful next time. Thunder rumbled outside, and I shivered, not just from the storm, but from a sudden terrible thought. Mr. Ethan, if she wants to kill you, and she knows I hurt her, doesn't that mean she'll want to kill me too? The look on his face told me I was right. I'd saved his life, but I'd also painted a target on my own back. We were both in danger now, and we only had each other. That's when everything really began. By evening, the storm had turned into a full Minnesota blizzard. Snow swirled against the penthouse windows while Ethan and I tried to figure out our next move. He'd offered to take me to Child Protective Services, but I refused. The system had failed me before, and I wasn't about to trust it now. Besides, foster care wouldn't protect me from Clara and Simon. We need evidence, Ethan said, pacing again. Something that proves Clara was behind this. She might have more conversations, I suggested. Bad people always think they're smarter than everyone else. Maybe she'll talk again. Ethan stopped pacing and looked at me with something like admiration. You're right, and you're the only one who knows what she sounds like. Who can recognize her voice? That's how we ended up driving through the blizzard toward Clara's penthouse apartment in the warehouse district. Ethan had called his head of security, Marcus, a former Marine who looked like he could bench press a truck. The plan was simple: get close enough to Clara's apartment to record any conversations, then turn the evidence over to the police. What we didn't expect was that Clara was planning something much worse than another accident. We parked across the street from her building, Marcus scanning for threats while Ethan set up some kind of high-tech listening device. That's when I saw him, Simon Rake, the man with the gravelly voice, walking toward the building's entrance with a backpack that looked suspiciously heavy. "That's him," I whispered. "The man from the coffee shop." Marcus grabbed his binoculars. "He's carrying enough gear to level half the building. This isn't just about killing you anymore, Mr. Calloway. She's going for something bigger." My blood turned to ice. "The whole building? But there are other people living there." Ethan was already on his phone with the police, but the storm had knocked out half the cell towers in the city. We could barely get a signal. "We have to evacuate the building ourselves," Marcus said. "Pull the fire alarm. Get everyone out." "Clara will escape," Ethan pointed out. "Then we stop her," I said, surprising myself with how brave I sounded. "We know she's bad now. We can't let her hurt innocent people just to get to you." Ethan looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Sophie, you're 6 years old. You shouldn't have to." "I stopped being just 6 years old when my mama left me behind," I said. "Sometimes kids have to be braver than adults, because we're the only ones small enough to fit in the spaces where the truth is hiding." That's when Marcus's radio crackled with a police dispatch. They'd received a tip about a bomb threat at Clara's building, but the bomb squad was stuck in the storm, at least an hour away. We were on our own. Getting into Clara's building turned out to be easier than expected. The storm had knocked out the electronic locks, and emergency protocols had unlocked all the doors. Marcus led us through the lobby, while Ethan pulled fire alarms on every floor. People streamed out of the building in their pajamas, confused and scared, but alive. I could hear Clara's voice echoing from somewhere below us. "Basement level," I whispered. "She's in the basement." The basement of the old warehouse building was a maze of storage rooms and maintenance tunnels. We followed Clara's voice deeper underground, past rusty pipes and flickering lights that made everything look like a horror movie. "The explosion needs to look like a gas leak," Clara was saying to Simon. "Make sure there's nothing left to investigate. Ethan's death has to seem accidental, and any witnesses need to disappear too." We crept closer, and through a crack in the door, I could see them. Clara looked different than I'd imagined. Younger, prettier, but with eyes as cold as January ice. Simon was setting up some kind of device with wires and timers. "What about the kid?" Simon asked. "The one who warned him?" "Especially the kid," Clara said. "She's seen too much. When this building comes down, she'll be inside." Problem solved. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it, but Ethan squeezed my shoulder gently, and somehow that made me braver. That's when we discovered something that changed everything. Behind us, hidden in the shadows, was another tunnel, one that led directly to the building's old coal chute. The opening came up in the alley behind the building, far enough away to be safe from any explosion. "Perfect," Marcus whispered. "We can get them out this way and trap Clara and Simon down here until the police arrive." But I had a different idea. What if we don't just stop them? What if we make them confess everything? Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? Clara thinks I'm dead, right? But what if I suddenly appeared and started talking about everything I heard? She might get so angry that she admits everything." "Absolutely not," Ethan said immediately. "It's too dangerous." "Mr. Ethan," I said, using my most grown-up voice, "sometimes the only way to catch a liar is to make them so mad they forget to lie. And nobody gets madder than a bad person when a kid proves they're smarter." Marcus was already setting up his phone to record. The kid's got a point. If Clara thinks she's won, she might get careless. Before Ethan could stop me, I stepped out of the shadows and into Clara's line of sight. "Hi, Miss Clara," I said in my sweetest 6-year-old voice. "I heard you talking about my new friend, Mr. Ethan. That wasn't very nice." The look on Clara's face when she saw me was worth every scary moment that had led up to it. Pure shock, followed by rage, followed by something that looked like panic. "You," she hissed. "You little rat. You're supposed to be dead. Now, that's not a very nice thing to say to a kid, I replied, channeling every ounce of sass I'd learned living on the streets. My mama taught me that adults should be kind to children, not try to blow them up. Simon reached for something in his jacket, but Marcus stepped out of the shadows with his own weapon drawn. I wouldn't, he said calmly. Clara's eyes darted between me and Marcus, her careful composure finally cracking. You don't understand, she said, her voice getting higher and more desperate. Ethan doesn't deserve that money. He inherited everything from his father. I've worked for years to get close to him, to earn what should be mine. So you decided to kill him? I asked, genuinely curious. That seems like a lot of work when you could just get a job. A job? Clara laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You stupid child. Do you know how hard it is for a woman to make real money in this world? How many men I've had to smile at? How many lies I've had to tell? Ethan was my ticket to the life I deserve. But he loved you, Ethan said, stepping out of the shadows. His voice was quiet, but I could hear the hurt in it. I was going to marry you, Clara. You could have had everything without murdering anyone. Clara spun around, her face twisting with fury. Love? You think this was about love? I've been pretending to care about your boring tech companies and your charity galas for 2 years, Ethan. 2 years of playing the perfect fiancé to a man who cares more about his computers than any human being. That's not true, I said, because suddenly I realized it wasn't. He cares about me, and he only met me this morning. Clara looked at me with pure hatred. You ruined everything, you little street rat. Everything was perfect until you stuck your nose where it didn't belong. I stuck my nose where someone was planning murder, I corrected her. That's called being a good person. Good person? Clara was practically screaming now. You're nobody. You're nothing. A throwaway kid living in garbage. Maybe, I said, surprised by how calm I felt. But I'm a throwaway kid who stopped a murder, saved a whole building full of people, and got you to confess everything while my friend Marcus recorded it all on his phone. Claire's face went white as Marcus held up his phone, the red recording light still blinking. 23 minutes of detailed confession, Marcus said, including the insurance fraud, the murder plot, and several threats against a minor. I'd say that's plenty for the prosecutor. The police sirens were getting closer now, the storm finally clearing enough for them to reach us. Clara looked around desperately, but there was nowhere to run. Simon had already dropped his weapons and put his hands up, smart enough to know when he was beaten. This isn't over, Clara snarled at me. You think you won something? You're still nobody. You're still a homeless kid with nothing. I looked up at Ethan, who was watching me with an expression I'd never seen before. It took me a moment to recognize it. Pride. You're wrong, I said to Clara. I'm not nobody anymore. I'm Sophie Lane, and I just saved the day. 3 months later, I was sitting in the kitchen of Ethan's house on Lake Minnetonka, helping Mrs. Peterson make pancakes for breakfast. Mrs. Peterson was the best housekeeper in the world. She made chocolate chip cookies just because, told amazing stories about her grandchildren, and never once made me feel like I didn't belong. The house was enormous, with more rooms than I could count and a library that had actual rolling ladders like in the movies. But my favorite place was the window seat in what Ethan called Sophie's room, the room that had been guest bedroom until he asked if I wanted to stay forever. Sophie, sweetie, the adoption papers came through, Ethan called from the doorway, waving an official-looking envelope. It's official now. I abandoned the pancake batter and ran to him, letting him sweep me up in a hug that smelled like his fancy soap and coffee. It still amazed me sometimes. This man who'd seemed so cold and distant that first day was actually the most caring person I'd ever met. He just hadn't had anyone to care about before. Does this mean I have to call you Dad? I asked, partly teasing but partly serious. The word felt strange and wonderful in my mouth. Only if you want to, Ethan said softly. You can call me whatever feels right. I considered this. How about Mr. Dad, since that's how we started? He laughed, the sound filling up the whole kitchen with warmth. Mr. Dad it is. Through the window, I could see Detective Rivera's car pulling up the driveway. She'd become a regular visitor over the past few months, helping with the adoption process and keeping us updated on Clara's trial. Clara and Simon were both going to prison for a very long time, But Detective Rivera said the most important thing was that they could never hurt anyone again. Ready for this? Ethan asked as Detective Rivera knocked on the door. Today was special. Detective Rivera was bringing someone to meet us. A social worker who wanted to talk about other kids like me. Kids who were living on the streets and needed help. Ethan had decided to start a foundation, and he wanted me to help design it because, as he put it, who better to help homeless kids than someone who knows exactly what they're going through? We opened the door together, and Detective Rivera smiled when she saw us. Sophie, Mr. Calloway, I'd like you to meet Janet Williams. She runs the city's emergency youth services. Ms. Williams was a small woman with kind eyes and the sort of smile that made you feel instantly safe. Sophie, I've heard so much about you. Detective Rivera tells me you have some ideas about how we can help other children in situations like yours was. I nodded, suddenly feeling shy but also excited. I think the most important thing is that adults should listen to kids, even when we seem small or dirty or like we don't matter. Sometimes kids know things that adults miss. That's exactly what we need to hear, Ms. Williams said. Would you be willing to help train our social workers? Teach them how to really see and hear children who might be afraid or hiding? I looked up at Ethan, Mr. Dad, and he gave me an encouraging nod. Yes, I said, standing up straighter. I want to help kids like me. I want them to know that being homeless doesn't mean being hopeless. Later that evening, after Ms. Williams had left with pages of notes and a check from Ethan for the new program, we sat together on the couch, watching the sunset over Lake Minnetonka. The lake was frozen solid, and the ice sparkled like diamonds in the fading light. Mr. Dad, I said quietly, do you think my real mama would be proud of me? Ethan was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. Sophie, I think any mother would be incredibly proud to have a daughter as brave and smart and kind as you. I know I'm proud to be your dad. Even though I'm not really yours? You are really mine, he said firmly. Family isn't just about who shares your blood. It's about who chooses to love you and take care of you and believe in you every single day. You chose to save my life when you didn't have to. I chose to make you my daughter when I didn't have to. That makes us more than family. That makes us a team. I snuggled deeper into his side, feeling safer and more loved than I ever had in my whole life. Outside, the first stars were beginning to appear in the clear winter sky. Mr. Dad? Yes, Sophie? Tomorrow, can we go back to that Starbucks where I first heard Clara? I want to buy a muffin instead of finding one in the dumpster. We can buy all the muffins you want, he promised, and maybe some for other kids who might be hungry too. I smiled, thinking about the journey that had brought us here. 6 months ago, I'd been invisible, forgotten, just another piece of human debris blowing through the city. Now I was Sophie Lane Calloway, daughter, hero, and someone who mattered. Sometimes the most broken people really can become the strongest family. Sometimes saving someone else's life is actually the first step to saving your own. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, being brave for just one moment can change everything forever. The stars grew brighter as we sat together. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to build something beautiful in the light. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new children to help, and new ways to prove that love can heal even the deepest wounds. But tonight, we were just a father and daughter, grateful for the miracle that had brought us together, and ready to face whatever came next as a family.